Hello, everybody. Welcome to the latest edition of the Pulse with BP. I'm your host, Billy Parvatam. Folks, I'm so excited today to be joined by Coach John Skaggs. Coach Skaggs is an educational specialist at Leidos, owner at Primetime Baseball, a former high school baseball coach. He's a world traveler and so much more. We know each other back in the day when I was a student at Marshall High School, and he worked there for 11 and a half years. And we've texted a lot recently, but it's nice to reconnect with him finally after it seems like quite a long time. So, Coach Skaggs, thanks so much for joining me, man. It's such a pleasure.
Billy, man, I appreciate you having me on. Long time watcher. Very been following your podcast for a while, my man, and I'm pumped to be on here today with you.
Yeah, I know we've been talking about having you on, so it's nice to finally make the schedules work here. Well, let's get right to it, Coach. For those who don't know, Coach obviously a big sports fan. I mean, you think about obviously, he loves the game of baseball. I think it's so cool. We have so many similarities. I think we'll get into as we talk in this podcast. We both work in education. You're actually born and raised from Michigan. I was raised there for 6 years, lived there for 6 years. I don't claim any of the Detroit teams, but I'm always happy to see him succeed. And both now. Live in the Northern Virginia area, so obviously a lot of similarities there. Both love the game of baseball, but obviously you talk about your sports allegiances, the Nats, the Lions, in football. You got Michigan in college football, so
Yeah,
lot of great
man,
teams there. But I wanted to first talk about your Detroit Lions, coach. I mean, what a great year they had this past season. Made it all the way to the NFC divisional. I mean, or rather the NFC Championship, and we're a second half away from potentially making the Super Bowl. Dan Campbell really revitalized the city. Jared Goff had just broke today. He signed a mega extension. So I know you being a long-suffering Lions fan, it was great to kind of see them really come out of nowhere in a lot of people's eyes. I mean, they were trending up with Dan Campbell, but I think to see them take the step they did was a surprise to a lot of people. But what are your thoughts on the Lions season, and how do you feel about them moving forward? Of course, again, like we talked about it, Goff with the big extension today.
yeah, man. My first Lions game was 1997. They played the Steelers. It was the famous coin toss game where they coin toss. Jerome Bettis called tails. It landed on heads. The refs gave it to him, and we lost. And that was my earliest memory of going to a Lions game and being a Lions fan. And man, we were awful. From the 0 and 16 season to having number one draft picks left and right, and just never doing anything with them. We just didn't have the leadership. And then Danny C came about, man, and that opening news conference when he talked about taking out kneecaps and then getting falling down and then getting up and taking off some more kneecaps. And people looked at him like this guy's crazy, right? And he is. I think he is. But the best part is that the players believe in him, right? And I think that's what's huge is they have bought in to what Dan Campbell believes in and how he approaches the game, and he knows how to get the best out of the players. And it's taken a few years, but I think this is year 4 for him now. But it took him a couple of years. But now he's got us trending in definitely in the right direction. That's for sure.
And I mean, what do you think about their Super Bowl chances? I mean, you think about it, Coach. I think you look at the NFC North. I think it's maybe the hardest division in football when you think about it. I think Jordan Love has emerged as probably one of the early MVP candidates for next season. The way he played against Dallas in that playoff game, and probably should have beaten the 49ers himself. You've got the Bears who have retooled. They drafted Caleb Williams. They've got a lot of talent around them. And you got the Vikings. I mean, look, they drafted J.J. McCarthy. They're looking to kind of rebuild quickly after Kirk Cousins departed for Atlanta. So look, I think everyone loves Dan Campbell as a motivator. I think some of his he made some questionable moves in the playoffs that probably cost him against the 49ers. Jared Goff, it's nice to see him bounce back, but is he the guy that can really lead the team to the promised land after signing this mega extension? You got Amon-Ra St. Brown, one of the best receivers in the game. I think he's top 5. So a lot of positives there, but I think the question is how long is their Super Bowl window considering their division is tough?
I don't think the window's that long, unfortunately. And it's not because the Lions aren't good, but I think in the NFL, your window's super short. You get a good team, you got a year or two to really kind of make it work. But to jump on a few things you said, look, the Packers, they made they lost. You got Favre, then you went to Rodgers, and now you're trying to find a QB, and you get Jordan Love, and he came in and he did his thing, man. But I don't. They're going to be good. They're going to be a battle with the Lions, but I see the Leos taking them. The Vikings, right? You got JJ, Michigan boy. He's a winner, right? They're going to win. Do I think they're going to win right away? No, but he's got weapons, man. He's got the ex-Lion Hawkinson. He's got JJ himself who can catch anything in the world that's thrown at him. You got Aaron Jones who came over from Green Bay. Like Vikings are going to be good, but I think they're a little bit away. So I think JJ McCarthy's got a show still. in the NFL. But the Bears are going to be interesting. I don't think they should have got rid of Justin Fields myself. I don't think he had the tools. I mean, David Montgomery, they shipped him off to Detroit, right? And then he 1,000-yard rusher, right? We thank you very much, Bears. But I don't think they should have got rid of him. However, they retooled in Caleb Williams. They've got his boy here from Gonzaga at receiver. You know, they've got the running back. Like they're growing, and I think they're going to make a big push. And the receiving core is going to be tough. But you know, St. Brown, he's right up there with JJ, one of the best receivers in the game. You know, Laporta at tight end. That's a huge draft pick last year. And then our running back getting Gibbs and Montgomery. You know, you got a little bit of speed like Barry Sanders and Gibbs, but then you got the pure power rusher in Demont. So I feel good. I feel good. I'm not saying Super Bowl just because I don't like to jinx us in that way. But man, last year was pretty fun, and I think you know, everyone ripped on Danny C for those play calls, but man, if you watched every game, he did it every game. First game of the year against the Chiefs, fourth down, he's going for it. And people are like, this guy's crazy. Touchdown. No one's complaining about it then, right? And how I see it as a coach myself, if you're going to take those risks and you do it all year, it's an expectation. You know, I can't be mad. You know, when it doesn't go our way, of course I'm bummed and it's easy to second guess. But guess what? If they converted any of those fourth downs and we're in the Super Bowl, no one's arguing about him going for it then. That's for sure.
How many Lions games did you go to this year, and how many have you been to in your career? And I guess to add on to that, what is it like to see a game at Ford Field? Because I've heard it really is one of the few NFL stadiums that resembles a college football type atmosphere. I mean, the fans are passionate; they love their Lions; they're there, win or lose. So I really think Ford Field is one of the crown stadiums and also fan bases of the NFL.
So this past year, I went to my wife's from Florida in Tampa, so we went down to the Buccaneers game, and there were more Lions fans in the stadium at Raymond James than there were Bucks fans, and it was very noticeable. And that was right when we were starting to get that roar, right? We were starting to feel good, and then the next weekend they were up in Baltimore, and went there with a bunch of my buddies, and unfortunately we got annihilated. I had people like taking selfies with me, like Lions fans. You know, that was rough. But then 2 weeks later, my buddy and I went up to Detroit, and they were there for the Monday Night Football game against Oakland, well, Vegas, and man, that game was unreal. That the atmosphere. I've been to Ford Field a lot, usually during the losing seasons where nobody gets that loud. But man, this year was something different, right? The atmosphere was electric. People were excited. There was hope. There wasn't just hope, there was belief, right? You know, they were believing that we were going to do it, and we did, man. And that was a huge win. But Ford Field, it is like a college atmosphere, right? It is an indoor stadium. It's not huge, like a huge ceiling. It's kind of like Lucas Oil and Indy, but it's a little bit smaller roof, but the sound really echoes, and it gets super loud in there. I've been in there for the NCAA basketball championships before. I saw UNC play back in '05, and you know, even then that was cool. But the football games they play in there, man, it just gets so loud. It's impressive.
That's a great point there on the lines. I got to ask you about the team that we both love, and that is the Washington Nationals, who are really surprising this year. I mean, what are they, 19-20 through almost 40 games? Obviously, won the
Right
World
around
Series.
500.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
First time since 21. They won it all back in 2019. I know we were both at game. I think it was. I was at game 4. I know you were. I think you were at all 3 games, right? The World Series. So yeah, I
Yep.
mean, what's it kind of? Can you talk about how that association started in terms of you getting season tickets, and what do you think about the Nats so far this year? I mean, I think they're it's early in the season, but they're exceeding expectations, and I think they've got people excited to watch them again, which I think hasn't been there last couple years.
So I moved to Washington D.C. from Michigan in 2012, and the Nats were terrible. They had Elijah Dukes and Ryan Zim and Niger Morgan, and they were bad. John Lannon was their number one pitcher, who nobody probably even knows who he is. But they were fun to go watch, and tickets were dirt cheap, and the ushers didn't care, so you'd buy a $10 upper deck and go sit in the lower level for, yeah, just they'd say go for it, right? So they ended up having a deal: buy 2 tickets, get 2 free in the lower level. So I went in with a couple people, and it was like 3 grand for 4 tickets, third baseline, 5 rows from the field. And I had them for 5 years. And then this guy by the name of Bryce Harper came around, and the Nats decided that we're going to jack up ticket prices because we started to get better. So I kept them for 10 years. As when they won the World Series in 2019, the next year was COVID, obviously, and I got rid of them during COVID. It just wasn't really worth it for me to go then, because they really didn't have games. But it was similar to the Lions, right? We were terrible. Nats were terrible. And I didn't feel like a bandwagon jumping on the Nats bandwagon in 2012 when they were awful. So I did, and watching them grow and get better was cool. One of our favorites, Miss Kathy Vioni, I know you know her. Her and I took an awesome trip. I don't know if you ever knew this, but we were at game 4, Nats Dodgers, and the Nats won to force a game 5. And her and I were there, and I said, Kathy, what if we go to the game in LA? And she's like, well, if you're serious, I'll go. And I'm like, really? So sure enough, we bought tickets, first baseline, 2 rows from the field. They were like $100. It's like it wasn't even that expensive for a NLDS game or NLCS game. And we took a flight out, got there right in the first inning, watched Max Muncy hit a home run, and we're like, did we just fly across the country to watch the Nats lose? Long story short, the Nats won. We get a police escort out of the stadium with all the Nats fans, and take the red eye home and made it in time to teach first period. So that was a pretty crazy experience. But went to all the World Series games. Did not go to I think game 7 down in Houston. I regret it to this day. But where they're at now, though, man. When they traded Turner, that hurt. That Turner and Scherzer deal, that one hurt me. I was in Greece and I get a text message from my buddy, and when they traded him, I didn't go to a game for a year and a half. I'll be honest. I didn't have my tickets. I didn't want to spend money on a team that I thought wasn't really making a push. And I know they didn't sign Soto, but they made a pretty decent offer at him. I mean, it was mega bucks, and it wasn't what he wanted. So, it wasn't what he wanted. But you look at the players, man. We got CJ Abrams right now, looks so good. Gore looks good right now. Like the guys who we got out of the deal are now starting to ripen, right? And they're starting to get there. And the Nats, they're not going to contend this year, and I don't think anyone expects them to. But they're going to battle, and I think if not next year, the following year, we're gonna make some moves. And I'm not promising World Series or anything like that, but I think we'll at least compete in the NL East.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you is do you think and look, I'm no fan of the learners. I think, they've shown that they're not willing to spend the money a lot of times, but do you think that they've been vindicated in some aspect? Because you think about it, I mean, letting go of most of those guys, Anthony Rendon, I mean, people question how much he even wants to play baseball with some of the comments he's made. Steven Strasburg, the one guy you did give the contract to, and he probably had to, given that he won the World Series. He was a homegrown Nationals guy. He's got hurt and never really had a chance to really live up to that contract. Really barely pitched at all after he signed that contract. Max Scherzer, he won a World Series with the Rangers last year, but he's had injury issues. Trey Turner, still a pretty solid player, but the type of guy that with speed such a part of his game, it really declines as you get older. Juan Soto, I
Yeah.
mean, look, they offered him a decent amount of money, as you said, and I don't think he's going to command that much when he goes. Maybe he will, but I don't think anyone can blame the Nats for saying, "Look, here's 300 plus million," and he's like, he doesn't want it and ends up getting traded. They get the prospects they get for him. So, do you think in some aspect they've been vindicated when you look at the fact that long contracts in baseball never really work out, and you see the talent that they have now, they're doing it for cheaper and really competitive and getting fans back into the team?
I think it's too early. I think we're a year away from really seeing if we can let them off the hook right now. Because yeah, they're doing well, but I mean they're 500, and the Braves are well ahead. Even the Mets, who I think are atrocious in all aspects of the game of baseball, are better. The Phillies are better, and I think the Marlins on paper have a better team before they traded Luis Ariz than they were actually showing. So I'm not gonna let them off the hook yet, but I will tell you that if Soto doesn't stay with the Yankees, I'm calling it now. This day, I think if he doesn't stay in New York, he's coming right back here.
Wow, all right.
Mark
I mean,
that.
it's pretty
Mark
big
that
bold,
down.
yeah.
I mean, Yankees is where he should be. Short porch and right field. They got all the money to throw at him. However, he's said it numerous times. I never wanted to leave DC. I thought I would retire a national. They just didn't. It wasn't the right deal for me. Well, guess what? After next year, he's older. Right? They're not going to be. Teams aren't going to throw many of them the 10-year deals. And if they do and they do make it, it's not going to be the money I don't think that he's looking for. It's not Shohei money, right? So I think he'll stay in New York. But if not, I think the Nats will at least make a push.
That's a good perspective to have. I wanted to ask you, Coach, on kind of a broader question on the pace of play in baseball. I think, in my opinion, the pitch clock has been a slam dunk for the game. I think it's brought more casuals in. I think it's maintained the pace of play. Kind of kept the game moving, but also come playoff time when you really think, man, this is you really want the moments of high tension and every pitch matters. It hasn't really taken away from that either in the postseason. So you kind of look at how the pitch clock has kind of been implemented these last couple of years. Attendance is also up for the first time in over 3 decades. How do you think it's been implemented, and are you a fan of the pitch clock? I know you're a big baseball guy, so I'm sure you probably have some traditional views, but I think are interested to see how this has played out with the pitch clock.
So when they first came out, I 100% against it. I just said, why are we speeding up the game? When you go to a game, you know what you're signing up for. You're there for 3+ hours, right? Like, and if you want to leave early, guess what? Just leave, right? No one's forcing you to stay longer. Now, with that being said, my wife definitely enjoys the shorter games. Now that I have a son, I enjoy going to the game when it's a little shorter because I can stay longer. But I I like it, right? I think it's added some different aspects of the game that we noticed in the high school and college level that we're now starting to see. So, for example, I've seen this year more players bunting the small ball. I see more guys. Yes, with the addition of the larger base, more guys are stealing. And this, I mean, the Nats have a ton of stolen bases. The Braves have a ton of stolen bases. Stolen bases are up in general, but you start to see strategy like first and third plays. I cannot think of a single time, except maybe playoffs, where there's a runner on first and third with 2 outs, and they steal the runner on first, do a steal and stop, and then the guy goes home from third. I haven't seen that in the MLB. College, yes. High school, every game. But MLB, I can't think of a time I've seen it, and I've seen it a dozen so times this year. So I like that they're not just up there trying to hit home run and drive the ball in the gap every time. There's strategy going back into the game, and the numbers being up is cool to see. But I also think guys like Otani and Ronald Acuna, these younger guys, these flashier guys, are bringing that. Mookie Betts, like these guys are bringing a little more life and energy into the game, and that flair I think is sticking with some of these guys. Gosh, Randy Arozarena getting the shoulder, you see that. Kids want to see that. Fans want to see that. That's the excitement that I think the game was missing, and so I'm glad to see these changes.
Yeah, I agree with you, and really watching the game on TV and even just going to a game in person, it just feels like you can be 6 innings and you're only at an hour and a half, hour 45. So you can tell the tangible difference it's made in making the game more entertaining to watch. I got to ask you though, do you think the pitch clock has contributed to the pitching injuries? I mean, we saw Spencer Strider's out for the season. We've seen some other high-profile guys get injured. Some people are saying they think it's perhaps because pitchers nowadays make 100% effort on every throw. They're throwing it seems like they're throwing their hardest on every throw. There's not as much of the strategy that guys like Greg Maddux and other, pitchers used to have in terms of mixing up speeds. What do you say? What do you think is the reason for maybe some of these higher profile pitching injuries? Does the pitch clock have anything to do with it?
So one change. This goes back a little bit, not with the arm injuries. I don't know if you saw the Nats moved all their games to 6:45,
Yep.
which I'm a huge fan of because it's only 20 minutes, but that 20 minutes makes a huge difference as that game goes on, especially with speeding it up. So kudos to that. But look, I think when something goes wrong, everybody jumps to a conclusion that this is the reason why things are going wrong, right? Yes, we've seen more high profile players get hurt, but guess what? Go back and look. Every year, guys are getting hurt, right? Every single year. It may not have been the number one pitcher for the Braves, right? But guys are still getting hurt every year. Look at Jared DeGrom. I haven't seen a guy pitch in freaking years. Pre-pitch clock injury. Scherzer, granted, he keeps getting hurt random reasons. Pre-pitch clock injury, right? So, I mean, I guess Scherzer got hurt last year, but then he had another injury coming back. So, I think it's easy to jump to conclusions that this is why. I mean, I feel there's multiple reasons, right? You look at Greg Maddux. Greg Maddux used to go out and throw 130 pitches in a game and then pitch 3 days later. Now you got guys who will throw 75 pitches, like Paul Skeens the other day. Paul Skeens, number one draft pick, they said, hey, you're at a 75 pitch count. You're out. We're limiting this guy. They're afraid of injury. They're afraid of a Steven Strasburg injury. So they're limiting it. But by limiting it, are they enabling it? Are they making these injuries, more prevalent? I don't know. But To say the pitch clock itself, no, I think there's a lot of reasons. Guys are training different. Look how strong Shohei Ohtani is. Look at Spencer Strider's legs compared to like Maddox and Smoltz and Glavine, right? They didn't lift, they went and golfed. That's what they did during the season. These guys now are throwing heavy weight around. So I think there's a lot of the game has changed and what guys do when they're not playing the game has changed. And I think how they prepare for the game has changed. Those are things that I think lead to more injuries. Guys pitching younger. I mean, kids throwing a lot at 8, 9, 10, all the way through middle school, high school, throwing a lot more. The arm only has so many bullets in it until it needs to get repaired. So I think there's a lot of different things. The pitch clock is just getting picked on because it's at the center of attention.
I gotta ask you, what do you think about some of the other pitching rules? I mean, they took out, they instituted basically a pitcher, unless it's the end of the inning, has to face a minimum of 3 batters. People say that kind of took out some of the specialists, the lefty-lefty matchups, the righty-righty matchups, and then also the runner on second base to start the start in extra innings. Now, granted, it's not there for the playoffs, so I think a lot of people have maybe backed off of that. But some of the purists say, well, I don't think it's really fair to, especially in a great game, maybe if it's 1-0, 0-0, or 0-0, 1-1, a low scoring game, and all of a sudden put a runner at second, maybe open it up for more runs. What do you think about those two rules? Are those some things you're on board with, or maybe you weren't at first and you've kind of come around? What are your take on those two rules?
I actually really like the runner on second rule. If it's speeding up the game, yes. But it goes back to small ball. If you get a runner on second, you got the bottom of the lineup up. What are you doing? You see guys bunt. Now all of a sudden you got a runner on third, or he gets safe and it's first and third, right? It's execution. It's executing the fundamentals. It is putting the pressure on the defense to make a play. And to me, that's baseball, right? It's not just hoping you hit a home run and get a walk off, like home run that way. So I think it adds a level of excitement. And guess what? If you start with the runner on second and they score, then you have the same opportunity when you get up, right? Um, I don't really have a preference on the facing 3 batters. It speeds up the game. I hate the mound visit. Oh, got that guy out. Let's bring another guy. Like I didn't like it. I wasn't. I know I've done it as a coach, but I was fine with it. The one that I found most interesting is the disengagement rule, right? So when you have a runner on first base, if you step off the mound, that's one disengagement, right? Or if you pick off, that's one. You get 2 on the third time for one batter that you try to do it. If he's not out, it's an automatic balk and he goes to second base, right? So baseball strategy says he's picked off twice. If he tries to pick me off again and I'm safe, I'm automatically at second. So you see guys get bigger leads when they've already tried to pick off twice, and they're almost a guarantee steal, right? To me, it's kind of common sense. Let's try to go for it. You can get an extra step, and so I don't know if I like the rule, but I think that you can use that to your benefit if you strategize correctly.
This question kind of will transition to the other big part of the podcast that I wanted to talk about, and that's travel, the love of travel that we both have. How many baseball stadiums have you been to? And yeah, I guess that was my first question. How many ballparks have you been to?
Man, I've been to a lot. Some that have closed down or they're no longer in use, but Seattle, Oakland, Minnesota, St. Louis are the 4 I have not been to. And then Texas's new stadium I have not been to, but I've been to all the rest of them. I'm actually trying to knock out Minnesota and St. Louis this August, trying to go for a little weekend to hit them both up. So, and I'm gonna wait to see Oakland until they move to Vegas or wherever they end up.
So that's awesome, man. I wanted to ask you, what's your favorite ballpark and what's your least favorite ballpark? For context, I've been to 13, so I've still got a ways from you, but not bad 1/3 until until the team expands, until MLB expands, rather.
Yeah. Favorite. I went I went to San Francisco and they were playing the Reds and had a buddy on the Reds, so we got to go on the field for BP. And being on the field's awesome in general, but the stadium's on the water. It's got a nice breeze. It was like August and it felt like 72 with the nice breeze. Stadium was great. The food was great. The atmosphere was awesome. That's by far my favorite stadium. So San Francisco. Like PNC is awesome. The view in center field with the bridge. You can't beat Camden Yards. You really can't. But overall, number one top stadium I've been to, by far has been San Francisco. My least favorite is hands down easy Chicago White Sox. That is a dump. I went to the game. We had phenomenal seats, and it was boring. Right? They're not good, first of all, and they were playing Oakland, who also was equally not good. But there's nothing there. There's no flair. There's no excitement. There's nothing. The food was mediocre, right? Like at least have a Chicago dog that's good. I had a terrible hot dog, right? So, to me that was a no bueno one for me. Chicago White Sox, worst field I've ever been to, hands down.
That's a great take. I actually haven't been to White Sox, so I'll have to keep that in mind whenever I visit there. I was gonna say PNC for the view, and then Baltimore, like you talked about. I think those are when you ask most people who kind of do this bucket list thing, it's those are usually two in the top five. And I wanted to ask you because I know you've been to a few NFL stadiums. Why do you think that it seems like really baseball is the one that, has the bucket list? Oh, well, I've got to go see all 30 MLB stadiums. I mean, you don't really hear people talking about I need to go see all 32 NFL stadiums. I don't need it. You don't hear people saying I need to go to all 30 NBA stadiums. It really seems like baseball is the one true like, hey, I want to travel around the country, see all these ballparks, really call it a bucket list item. What do you think baseball has that special effect that really the other sports don't seem to have?
I think there's a few reasons. One, I have one bucket list NFL stadium. That's Seattle. I want to go out there. That place looks electric. It looks so loud. To me, that's the only stadium I really want to go to. Like the rest, I just want to go see the Lions win at. Um, I think it's nostalgia. It's the national pastime, right? My dad and I, for my 14th, 15th, 16th birthday, we went and traveled to 3 different stadiums for a week for my birthday. That's what I wanted to do. We hit like Yankee Stadium, then Shea Stadium, Camden Yards, and then we hit Philly, their old ballpark, Citizens Bank. So like, the quality time you get to spend with the people you're going to. NFL games are great. They're awesome, but they also go by pretty quick. And they're action packed, and you don't want to miss a play. Well, let's be honest, you can miss 3 innings of a baseball game and you may not have missed anything, right? So I think there's that like kind of laid back feel to baseball. It's also in the summer, right? Out of school, you have more time, you take a vacation with your kids, where NFL games, Thursday night, Monday night, those are tough to do unless you're in your hometown. And then Sunday, you got to fly there and then fly back that night, work. It's just tougher. So I think the summer really adds to that vibe too.
I also think, Coach, every baseball stadium is unique the way it's designed. I mean, for the most part, every NFL stadium is the same, every NBA stadium is the same, but the way the ballparks are designed, I mean, you can go to Wrigley and you've got those iconic bleachers. You can go to Fenway, you've got the Green Monster. St. Louis, you've got the arch in the view behind the stadium. I mean, I think just the fact that each baseball ballpark truly is designed uniquely, I think that kind of just adds to it and makes people want to travel and see all these the stadiums. So great discussion. There one
Well, they're trying.
yeah.
They are trying that. You look at like Chicago just unveiled their new stadium. It looks beautiful. They're trying to do it where it is. Minnesota, same thing. They're trying to renovate, or they renovated their stadium and made it beautiful. I think these fields are trying to tap into some, like you said, what baseball's doing to bring some of that excitement. There's carousels at Tiger Stadium or Comerica Park for the kids to go on and different stuff. They don't have that at NFL stadiums. I think NFL stadiums are geared towards adult beverages, and that type of stuff, where baseball is a more family oriented atmosphere. So
Yeah, I gotta ask you too, before we move on to the travel portion, is obviously we do assume that at some point, especially before Rob Manfred steps down, that there will be expansion. There's always a couple of these cities that are thrown out there, Nashville, Montreal, that had the Expos before they became the Nationals. You can throw in another couple cities in there. Is there one or two cities that you think, man, this would be a great place for expansion? Maybe just because the city is so great, but it somehow doesn't have a team, or maybe geographically, regionally, you think it'd be good to have a team in that area? I mean, are there one or two cities you think, man, this would be perfect for baseball to put an expansion team there?
I mean, Nashville hands down is number one, and I think that's coming real soon. I mean, who doesn't love to go to Nashville for a weekend, and it's a good time. But also, I think the Southeast is hurting for baseball, right? You think of the southeastern part of the United States, you've got the Braves. Yes, they're there, but everybody from Kentucky down to Bama, down to Florida, they're not Rays and Marlins fans, they're Braves fans. And until the Nats came, you're either an Orioles or a Braves fan here, right? The Carolinas, they're all Braves fans. So that, I think Nashville will pull some people going that way a little bit. I don't think there's any markets like Charlotte. I don't think it's big enough. They've got a AAA team there for the used to be the White Sox. I don't see that being a big enough market. Salt Lake City's getting some buzz right now with hockey moving there, and you already got basketball. So I could see that, but I mean Nashville is hands down number one. Maybe Salt Lake. That's a maybe.
Do you see the hype with Montreal? I mean, they moved from Montreal to DC for a reason. Do you think they deserve maybe another team or another team in Canada?
I mean, I think I remember when they used to play each other. I mean, that's how old I am. Is I remember when the Jays and Expos used to play each other, and Moises Alou and Vladimir Guerrero were all there, and that was cool to see. I don't know how much you look at the Jays games, and when they're doing well, they're packed, and when they're not doing well, there's nobody there. So for someone to try to take a gamble and try to do that, I think they need a new stadium. Obviously, I think that would have to be in the mix and have to do something pretty big to draw fans there. But I mean, I'd be all for it. I'd even be for international. They like Puerto Rico. I know it's not international, but outside the continental U.S., I think a Puerto Rico team would be cool. I think a team in Mexico, like Mexico City, where they just played, would be pretty cool. There's definitely the fan base in both those locations.
I wanted to ask you, do you think it's feasible? I know the NFL has talked about this. I don't know if baseball has talked about it. They've had a series in London. Do you think it's really feasible to put a team out there? I mean, you talk about the travel difference. It's not terrible. I mean, you look at London to the East Coast, it's probably about the same as a West Coast team flying out east. But of course, you've got the time difference that's, I think, really tangible. Do you think it's feasible for maybe the NFL or NFL or MLB to really put a team out there in London that could be a part of their league?
NFL 100%. I think I'm surprised Jacksonville hasn't moved there yet, with the owner being from London, and owning them. So I'm surprised they're not there. I mean, they already play what 2 or 3 games a year there, but I think the NFL, being that it's one day a week, right? It's one game a week, and you could go out there and you could give them 3 games in a row at home out there where they wouldn't have to travel or whatever, which is not unheard of for a team to have 3 home games in a row. I could see something like that. I think it'd be pretty cool. I don't think a team based in Europe will happen, or in Asia, just because you'd have to. I mean, like you said, yeah, the 6 hour flight's not bad, but that time difference is pretty significant. And when you're trying to get games going with that big time difference, I think it'd be tough. I'm not saying it couldn't happen, but that's why I think the London series is so big. Next year they were supposed to be playing in France. I don't know if you knew that. They're not going back to London next summer in 2025. They're going to France, but that just got nixed because they didn't have a big enough stadium to host it.
Wow.
So they've had to pull out of there. But you see the excitement when they go to Korea, when they go to Japan, they go to Mexico City. I mean, it's there. It's definitely there. So could I see it in the near future? Near future, no. Eventually, I think so. But NFL, I think in the next couple of years, it'll be a thing.
Well, Coach, we're 30 minutes in, and we're finally going to talk about the part I'm really excited to talk with you about, and that is travel. We both share a love of traveling. I believe you've been to what, 46 countries? You said, is that right?
That is correct.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I've been,
since 14 countries in 13 years.
yeah, yeah. So, and I've been to 38. So definitely, we're fortunate to be well traveled between the two of us. How did you get into traveling? Because you just mentioned a lot of it's happened in the last decade. How did that kind of come about? I'm sure that's something that it's probably been on your mind for a while, and I think at some point, just like let's just go and do it.
So when I finished in college, I played college baseball, and played a couple years of independent ball. When I got done playing baseball, I was 24, and I moved from Michigan out to here. I didn't have a desire to travel besides Canada. Like, it just wasn't something I wanted to do. It's not that I was baseball, baseball, baseball. That was all I did, all I ever thought about. I was hoping maybe I have a shot at the minor leagues, big leagues. Didn't happen. But one of my best friends from college, he played American football in Denmark. And Brandon, his name was, always was like, John, come visit, John, come visit. And I was like, I can't. And finally, I was 25, and he said, John, come visit. And I was like, I got nothing this summer, so I'm in. So I flew out there, and I was out there for 2 weeks, and we went to Denmark, and we were at Copenhagen, Denmark. We were there as our base, and then we were in Paris, and we went over to like Malmö, Sweden. So I knocked out 3 countries right away. And I had the time of my life, man. I was eating all this new food, meeting all these new people, all this new experience. And I said, this is the coolest thing. I love baseball, but this is awesome. So, I got that travel bug. It was it was immediate. It was 2014, I think it was, and man, I have not looked back since.
I'm curious, are there certain travel perks that you have, whether it's something to do with the flight when you're actually being there, you're like, I like to do X, Y, and Z. I mean, are there certain travel perks that you have that maybe people might be surprised to know, or maybe people who are interested in traveling would say, what are some of your advice or just perks that you have that you like to do in terms of habits?
So, well, my wife, we've been married 8 years. Her first 4 years, she was actually a flight attendant for United, and then for American Airlines, and then worked for their operations here in DC at Reagan. So, with that, we got perks like we just had to pay for taxes to fly somewhere. So I remember there was a weekend we flew her birthday. We flew to Paris for 72 hours, and it cost us like $20. So we flew first class to Hong Kong for $49. So, you think like going out to dinner and a night out in DC, we were paying the same price to go out to Europe. So we were very fortunate to be able to do that. But since then I've got a good buddy named Eli, and he's introduced me to like the credit card game, right? So maximizing ways that you can get points and off your credit card purchase, just doing some normal everyday stuff. And from that, I've been able to accrue points and stuff that I've been able to travel, all around the world. Been fortunate enough to fly, whether it's first or business class, using points and miles and stuff. So you're really kind of being smart about that, but utilizing those resources.
Coach, I don't know about you, but I feel like I'm the kind of guy that I like to see a lot in a little amount of time just because I'm like, well, I don't know the next time I'm going to be in Europe and I'm going to be as close proximity to a bunch of countries. I want to try to knock out 4 or 5 in a week or, 10 days if possible. Are you kind of more of that mindset, or are you kind of, maybe we see 3 countries and we take more time and really truly appreciate the countries? I mean, is there a place that you fall in terms of that perspective, whether it's spend more time or try to see a lot in a little amount of time?
Billy, you and I are the same, man. I like to see a lot in a little amount of time, right? So if I'm going, my friends joke, they're like, "Oh, John went to the bathroom in this country and then he left, so he was already tired of seeing that place." But for me, like, look, you could go to London and you could stay in London for 2, 3 weeks and still not see everything there is to see, right? But for me, I want to see the major sites. I want to try the food. I want to get lost in the city and find my way around, use the metro system, that type of stuff, kind of just see what life is like. But I don't really need to stay there in one spot for a whole week, right? So like when I plan my trips, I would rather go. I'd rather go, be in London for two full days, and then go to the next place and be there for 2 days and go to the next place and cram as much in as possible. And see as much as you can and just go. And then guess what? Crash at night and wake up and do it again the next day.
Yeah, it's definitely a perspective that I agree with. What's the favorite country that you have? That if you could pick one, what's your favorite country that you've been to?
That's funny. This is actually a question I get asked all the time. And there's two. I've got two for different reasons. So number one is Japan. Hands down, that's the best country I've ever been to. I've been 3 times. Love it. Been to Sapporo, Tokyo, Osaka, Kyoto, and love it. I love that you're on the other side of the world. First of all, like you're just like, wow, I'm literally on the other side of the globe. The food's amazing. I love sushi. So I mean, the sushi there is so fresh. It is pricey, but the people are so nice. Everything's so clean. I remember I got off my first trip to Tokyo. I got off the plane, and there's somebody cleaning the trash can in the airport, and like scrubbing it. I'm like, where am I? Right. So, Tokyo, Japan is my favorite. The second one is South Africa. My wife and I did our honeymoon in South Africa. I went shark diving in Cape Town, and then went and did a safari through Kruger National Park and saw all the animals that you see at the zoo, but like you saw as a kid, and to see them in their natural habitat is scary and awesome at the same time.
I agree with you. I just came back from Japan. And, I think it's the best country I've been to. I think when I visited Tokyo, I was like, Tokyo is basically a much better New York City without like all the trash that you may see on the streets.
Yeah.
The metro is terrific. You feel safe. I mean, people are kind of let you do your own thing. The people are friendly as well. But I'd have to go with Japan. Just the culture. That really was awesome. And then kind of similar to you, I think I would say maybe one of the most unique things I've done, and it's, you mentioned Kruger Park where you went to in South Africa. I went to Serengeti National Park in Tanzania, and you get to see all the lions. And to me, that's what I think made that more unique. Because I don't know if you agree with this or not, but I feel like most of the European major cities, they're kind of the same. I mean, they've got their historical architecture. A lot of them were impacted by World War II and the Cold War, so you kind of see that when you visit those cities. But so to me, I don't really see the difference between like a London, Paris, Budapest, Prague. I mean, they kind of all blend in. I think after a while, is that a perspective you share?
Yes, but I will go in a heartbeat. So like, my wife always jokes, she's like, Europe is churches, right? It's old churches and stuff like that, which she's not wrong, right? But as a former history teacher, I like that. I like that aspect of it. But I as much as I love, Japan, Europe is one of my favorite places to travel. I do like the old school feel of it. But but yeah, I agree with you. London, Paris, yeah, they all have their differences and certain things, but you go to one, they're very similar.
And how about I don't know if least favorite is the right word, but maybe one that you thought had more to be desired. Like you were excited to go there, and you thought, I don't know if this was really what I was looking for. I mean, is there one country or a few that really stand out like that?
So, we've done about 4 cruises, and a cruise is kind of like the lifestyle that you and I like to do, where you go there, see what you need to see, and then you get back on the boat and eat some food and do it again the next day. So we did a cruise to the Mediterranean. That was cool to see. And there's some places like we went to Kotor, Montenegro. It was just one town, so I didn't really get to experience Montenegro as a whole. We went to Dubrovnik, I mean, in Croatia, which was awesome. Game of Thrones, seeing all that stuff. But I didn't get to explore much. But I don't really have like a least favorite, but when you think of some of like the Caribbean islands, they're beautiful. But if you're going like for a vacation to chill, that's kind of why you go there. But if you're going to like really explore and see a bunch of stuff, then like the Caribbean's probably not the place to go, right? They're more, you're either going like adventure seeking or you're going to just chill. If you're going to kind of see sights and stuff, it's not really what the Caribbean is. So I don't really have a least favorite, but depending what I'm looking to do, kind of determines what I like and don't like of those places.
Yeah, I was actually gonna say the exact same thing. I think, the Caribbean and, places like Jamaica, for me personally, I'm not like a beach guy. Like I can't tell you last time I've been to a beach. I don't go to the pools. I'm not a water guy in general. So to me, I mean, those are places where that's literally the beach is right there. That kind of Cancun kind of stands out to me. But I was in Cancun for a kind of a it was extended layover. So, you leave the airport, kind of have a chance to walk around a little bit. And it's all beaches. So it's like for me, it's like, well, that's not really what I'm looking for. But obviously people who are fans of beaches and like that, they're gonna tend to enjoy that more. What's the number one country that is on your bucket list right now? I know it's tough because there's so many great places to go to, but if there's one country that you would say it's on your bucket list you haven't been to yet, what would it be?
Well, it was Dubai. Dubai was number one, and then was fortunate to go there 2 months ago. And that's number three of my favorite places I've been, by the way. Dubai is like New York and Vegas on steroids. But uh, I mean, I've always wanted to go to Machu Picchu. I've always wanted to go to Peru and climb Machu Picchu. Actually, I don't want to climb it. Just let me hop on the bus and take it to the top. I don't need to climb it and say I did that. So that's like one of the bucket list places I'd like to go to. I've never been to South America. Believe it or not, I've been all over. So I'd say really it's Machu Picchu or Gold Coast in Australia. Australia, New Zealand. I want to go down there. Some plans in the works to get us down there. Some baseball stuff, hopefully in the next year. So that'd be pretty cool. But those are the two places I think right now.
Yeah, I would say, and I've been to Machu Picchu, so I can't recommend it enough. I would say for me, Greece. I know you went there relatively recently, but a lot of history there, very similar to Italy. And I grew up reading, Percy Jackson and all these different
Sure.
books on Greek mythology. So that would be a kind of my number one place. Anything that
You've been
really
to
stood
Italy,
out?
right?
I haven't been to Italy. I have been to Italy. So anything that really stood out to you about Greece? Just curious because you've been there.
Yeah. So we flew into Athens and then so we did the cruise we took in Europe. We went to Santorini and we were there for the day. So that was cool. And then we went back 2 years ago and went to Athens and then took a ferry over to Mykonos. And then from there we actually flew to Egypt. So we were able to see Greece. Same thing, right? It's got the chill vibe if you're looking for that, but it has adventure. But then the history aspect of it was really cool to see. I mean, you're in the middle of downtown Athens and you're walking around, you see shops, and all of a sudden you just look up on this mountain and you're like, whoa, like that thing's old, right? Like, and that's pretty cool to see. And it's just like, bam, right there for you to see. So that's pretty cool. If you get the chance to go to Greece, check that out, and then also check out Crete. Crete's another tiny island in Greece. I haven't been to yet, but I've had a lot of friends who have gone and really liked it.
Is there one monument that when you visited, you were taken, you were taken aback by, like, man, this is just so breathtaking to be here, whether it's the Parthenon, the pyramids, is there one monument that when you visited you were like, man, this is just really awesome to be here?
I mean, the first time I went in the Coliseum, I was just mind blown. I'm like, I'm here. Like, I'm in the Coliseum. You see Gladiator, Russell Crowe, all this stuff. You're like, I'm here. But I think the one that I was in awe and scared at the same time were the pyramids in Egypt. So we went to the pyramids in Giza and we were looking at them. They're awesome. We saw the Sphinx and that was cool. But one of them, and I don't remember the name, my wife and I actually got to go inside. I mean, I'm 6'5", right? I'm a big dude. I'm also a little claustrophobic, and I didn't know that until that trip. Because to go down into the pyramid, you have to walk backwards down this square hole that is not very big, and it is stale air down there. You can still smell a lot of the old smells, and I couldn't wait to get out. My wife had to talk me into going. She's like, "When are we coming back to Egypt? Get down here." And I was like, "All right, all right." It took me a good 30 minutes and I finally made it down. And I was like, all right, cool. We saw it. Get me out of here. But that place was unreal. Just like, how did they make this? Right? Like, how was this made back then? That I think was the thing I was in awe of, really, was the pyramids.
Yeah, I think places like the pyramids, the Taj Mahal in India, I think that, those, I mean, they were built so long ago that, like you said, you kind of have that feeling of like, man, how did they build this back in 1200 or whenever it was, the, prehistoric times that they ended up building this? I would say, Coach, and I don't know if you've been there, but I think it's something that think took my breath away. I was there over there, during Thanksgiving, is the World War II memorial that's dedicated to the Americans in Luxembourg. Had a
Mhm.
chance to go there. I was kind of
Right
doing my
now.
research, and they're saying this is, if you look at like Planetware, some of those, sites that
Mhm.
have top 15 places in, X city, they said this was the number one place in Luxembourg. And I just went,
Yep.
and I remember it was Thanksgiving. I just, it just took my breath away that, man, the Americans in this country that's kind of landlocked in between, like, France and Germany and Belgium, they've got this, I mean, huge, really, memorial to their efforts in World War II. David Patton, for those who don't know, is buried there. The general. I mean, I just think it's just that to me, I think was like, man, I was there on Thanksgiving. Obviously they don't celebrate Thanksgiving in Europe, but an American holiday, and just to be there, I thought that was breathtaking. So I can't recommend Luxembourg enough if you have a chance to visit there.
Yeah. Well, so I've not been to Luxembourg. I had a similar feeling when I was in Japan. I was there 4th of July, and granted, Japan and 4th of July have zero correlation with anything. But it was the first time I wasn't in the States for the 4th of July in my life, and there were nobody celebrating, which I didn't expect anyone to. But I felt like the sense of pride, like it's my country. I'm celebrating it across the world. I went and found a hot dog and a hamburger and some French fries, just to do that. But no, I that certain time of the year or certain dates and stuff that bring up that history and that feeling, that kind of nostalgia feeling. I can definitely see that. I'll put it on my list.
For sure, and I wanted to ask you too, because I know we talked about this earlier. We both been to a game, fortunately, in Japan in the Tokyo Dome, a baseball game. Can you kind of compare and contrast that experience of a baseball game in Japan to a game here in the United States?
There's nothing like it, man. My roommate in college played a season over there in Japan with the Fighters. They actually won the World Series that year. He was MVP. His teammate was this guy named Shohei Ohtani. Not sure if you've heard of him, but they were teammates over there, so I got to see them and meet them, and it was pretty cool. But the games are crazy. They start at 6 o'clock instead of 7. The fans who come, they stay for the entire game. They don't leave early. Games are done by 8:39, the latest. The level of respect is mind blowing. When the visiting team is up to bat, the home team is not yelling anything. They'll clap if their team makes a good play, but they're just so respectful. And then in somewhere in the outfield, in left or right field, there's a visiting team section, and they're cheering for their team while they're hitting. And like I said, the home team's not. So that level of respect's amazing. You don't hear people yelling at the umpire for a bad call or booing. There's none of that. The food, I'm eating sushi at a game, which obviously I told you I love sushi, so that's awesome. They have cheerleaders, which is interesting on top of the dugouts and in between innings. The other two things that are crazy is uh, they have a fifth inning smoke break. So they actually stop in the fifth inning and the umpires have a smoke break. I don't know if they still do, but it's like tradition that they did. And then after the game, they do like a player of the game. So like in hockey, they have like 1 star, 2 star, 3 star. There they do a player of the game and they get a prize. So I remember, my buddy like had got a win and had a bunch of strikeouts, and he got like 4 or 5 massive bags of rice, and it was just delivered to his apartment, and he had all this rice to eat. Sometimes you get like beer, or you get money, or you get stuff. So it's interesting to see that and how the game is different. The game's played very similar though. There's not much differences in that. Just the level of respect that you see from everybody is not seen here.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. Like, it really made me question, like, man, it is kind of obnoxious how we boo for every little thing. Like, guy throws over to first, that's a boo, you know. But I just thought, like you said with the marching bands, it really felt like, I think European soccer is probably the most, and World Cup soccer probably the best atmosphere in terms of at a sports game in the world. And I thought that the atmosphere at a Japanese baseball game really rivaled that. So I think, can't say enough. If you have a chance to go to Japan, go to a baseball game, you will not regret it. Coach, it's been such a great discussion on travel, and obviously love always hearing your perspective and where you're going. It's always fun to see. I got to ask you, this last topic before we wrap up for the podcast. You've been so gracious with your time. Is we knew each other back in the Marshall High School days. I was a student there, graduated 2015. You kind of came around the same time, maybe my sophomore, junior year. If I remember, you stayed 11 and a half years. You coached baseball there for a couple years under Coach Aaron Tarr. So that's where we also overlapped because I was the PA announcer for the team, and we had some great runs to the regional semis that were a lot of fun that I look back on from time to time. But what are kind of some of your favorite memories at Marshall? And certainly the fact that you were there 11 and a half years made it a really hard place to leave. And I'm sure you had just a lot of great memories and a lot of people that you still keep in touch with today.
Yeah, so I came in 2012 is when I started teaching at Marshall, and I was in the history department for 6 years, and then transitioned over to working in the academy for my last 5.5 years. I coached at Marshall as the varsity assistant for 2 years. With Aaron Tarr there, he gave me an opportunity. Mr. Joe Swarm got me the opportunity there. So, and then you and I met. You were the voice of the Statesman, doing all the basketball games, and then came over to do our baseball games. At first I was like, why is this guy announcing like this? And then after the second game, I said, I'm so glad this guy is announcing like this because I loved it. Um, Baseball wise, I was only there 2 years, but it's where I got my start, which led me to be able to go get the head coaching job at Yorktown and have some good success there. But I got to coach both the Blackstone boys, right? Kent and Mitch Blackstone, was able to coach them. They had good careers in college. Cornell for Mitch, and then Kent went to New Mexico State and then out to Mason. So getting to know those guys like Riley Cummins, who went out to UVA, and Alec went to Catholic. So getting to coach some of those guys, John Bennett, I really got to learn who I was as a coach, and kind of how to do things and how not to do things. And Aaron Tarr was a great mentor for me. Teaching wise, I came into the building, and Mr. Jeff Litz was the assistant principal who hired me, and now he's the principal. But the guys who I got to work with in the history department, I mean, one of our favorites, Kevin Curtin, happy birthday today. It's his
Yeah.
birthday. Big shout out to him. But Kevin and Rich Rezig, those were guys who welcomed me in the history department. Taught me the way. I would not have been able to do my job as a history teacher if Rich hadn't shown me how to do it. Mr. Rezig, he was awesome. I think he's the best teacher I've ever had a chance to know. No, he knows his stuff, and he's super sarcastic, and I love that. Just the time spent with them, dress up days, that type of stuff. That's the stuff that I definitely miss when I reminisce on my times at Marshall.
And if you don't mind, can you kind of speak to? I mean, you're there 11 and a half years. That's not nothing. And you decide to make this career transition and go to Leidos, where you're educational specialist currently. What kind of went into that decision? I'm sure it was tough because on one hand, you maybe want to look to advance your career, but you're leaving all these people you love and really respect. And like I said, you've been there over a decade, so I'm sure it had to be a tough decision that you ultimately ended up making.
Yeah, no, it was definitely not an easy decision. I won't lie. Some days I'm like, was it the right one? And then some days I'm like, yeah, it was the right one. So I think come June 17th, when they go on summer break, I will regret my decision for a good 2 months. Um, but just different thoughts. When I'm looking back at teaching was great. It was a great way for me to get my foot in the door education wise. I got my master's, which I was not planning to get out of college. And I was able to get my master's, and through that, it's led me to the position I have now. Um, when I'm looking back, for me, I didn't want to be an administrator. I see the work that Swarm puts in and Let's put in. I don't want to do that. I didn't want to work nights and weekends and all that, and I didn't want to do that. So I knew if I was going to advance in my career, I would have to go to the administrator route, which I didn't want to do. I miss the kids, I miss the people I taught with, but looking at what I'm able to do now, there's a lot more room for growth. There's room for travel. There's room to still make a difference in kids' lives, just not in the classroom. And that's what I'm doing.
That's awesome, and I think we're also competing to be Miss Kathy Vione's favorite world traveler. I know you know her well, and I've had a chance I've been fortunate to be able to keep in touch with her over the years. Her daughter went to Virginia Tech, so we've got that
Mhm.
Virginia Tech fandom. So I think we're competing for that. Can you also talk about that? I mean, because that's something that I don't know necessarily. I mean, it's probably just one of those things where you just got to know her through work. Because did you guys really work directly for the most part during your time at Marshall? Because she was more with the sports administration. You were doing a lot of teaching until you kind of moved
Yeah.
really even internally there as well.
So we never worked together. My first year teaching, I ate lunch with in the PE department, right? I worked in one of the PE classes as an assistant, and I had lunch every day with Esther Horner and Autumn Schuler, and then with Kathy. We'd have lunch every day. And at that time, I was a 25-year-old single guy, and everyone else was a married person, and they were asking like, "Oh, so what are you doing on a Friday night? What are you doing on a Saturday night? And what are you getting into?" And that type of stuff. So I think they get kind of like we're finding out about me and whatnot. But from that, a relationship grew. We had the love of the Nats, and then she'd come watch the baseball games and stuff, and then I'd always walk by her office and go in and talk, and we just it was just something that kind of grew. I called her my work mom. She'd always check in to make sure I was okay. I'd check in to make sure she was okay. Just having good days and just always saying hi. And from that, I mean, it developed into a really good friendship. And same thing. I saw her about 2 months back. We got to grab lunch. She's someone who I'll always keep close to here because she's one of my favorites.
That's a great story there to share. Coach, my final question for you again, it's so gracious with the time. You've done it coaching, you've done it playing the game of baseball. Is it more thrilling to be part of like a team success, whether it's not, I don't even know if championship is the right word, but even just a great run? Is it more thrilling as a player or as a coach?
I think a coach, right? I mean, I've been fortunate enough to be on championship teams as a player. The work that you put in, the ups and downs of the season. But really, as a coach, you have that same thing. You put a lot of work in. You have ups and downs. You don't always get the recognition that maybe inside you feel you need or that you deserve, but you don't always get that as a player. So to me, I think they go hand in hand. What I've noticed about coaching is I'm able to mold the players, not just on the field, but off the field, right? Whether it's in the classroom, making good decisions off the field on a weekend or doing something like that, or helping them decide and help where they're going to go in college. That's stuff that as a player, I didn't have the opportunity to do, right? And plus, as a player, like in college and high school, you had 8 years in high school and college. I've coached for 13 in high school ball. So I've surpassed my 8 years that I got to do at that level, and I'm still able to do more and more. So, I mean, a championship at any level is amazing. So, whether that's travel or little league or anything, it's cool. But I really enjoy the coaching aspect and seeing the growth and seeing a kid who, as a freshman, weighs 105 pounds, soaking wet, not very good, but has a desire to do better. To then seeing him walk across the stage senior year going to play college baseball, that not many things beat that.
That's just a perspective to have because I feel like, you ask a lot of people, they're like, you don't have the impact on the game like you do as a player. Just the thrill is not the same in terms of, because you talked about, I mean, you can coach these guys up, but ultimately they have to go out on the field and perform. So it's interesting to hear you say that even with that perspective, you still probably go coaching.
Well, it's what you put into it, right? I mean, when I go into something, I go all out. And you ask any player that I've ever coached, whether it's Yorktown or Marshall, I'm enthusiastic, I'm energetic, I'm passionate, and I go all out. And if I can't go all out on something, then that's not the right fit for me. And I think that's something that I found is, um, I took the same passion I had from playing into coaching, whether that was during batting practice, running around in the outfield, catching balls, competing against guys to see who could catch more, talking smack to the players like I would when I was playing. Like, that's all you got. You can't hit it out. Making side bets on a home run derby, or I got a kid who still owes me a Ruth Chris steak for losing. We do that type of stuff. It's a competitive nature, but by me being competitive and showing them that I care and I believe, that's where we start to get those big goals, and that's why I do it.
Coach, this has been such a pleasure. We're just about at an hour, but I feel like it flew by in a few minutes with all the great conversations we've had. Thank you so much for your time. I know we've been trying to get this to happen for a couple weeks now, and really enjoyed it and hope we can do it again sometime.
Yeah, man, Billy, I'm always in. Hopefully, we can talk in the fall when the Lions are about to make their Super Bowl run and the Nats are fighting for a wild card spot.
Yeah, that's all good by me. Well, thank you so much to Coach John Skaggs for joining me on the latest edition of this podcast. Educational specialist at Leidos, owner at Primetime Baseball, former Marshall High School history teacher, also a longtime baseball coach, especially in the high school and travel levels, and a world traveler as well. Thanks so much to Coach John Skaggs for joining me on the latest edition of the Post with BP. I'm your host, Billy Parvatam. We thank everybody for joining us, and we'll see you next time.